The large classroom at the Galactic Military Academy was full of noise and excitement. Students from many different alien worlds sat in their seats, talking quietly among themselves. Today was different from their usual classes. Professor Kane stood at the front of the room, looking serious as he watched the young cadets settle down. Professor Kane was tall and thin, with gray skin and small black eyes that seemed to see everything. He belonged to a race called the Vorthek, known for being very smart and careful with secrets. His long fingers moved across the control panel, and the room's lights became dimmer. "Listen carefully," Professor Kane said in his deep voice. "What you will learn today is top secret. You cannot tell anyone else about this information. Not your friends, not your family, not anyone." A student named Rex raised his hand. Rex had blue skin and came from the planet Nexus. His people were known for asking lots of questions. "Professor, why is this lesson secret? We have studied many wars in the galaxy before." Professor Kane looked at Rex for a long moment. "Because this lesson is about something that has never happened before in galactic history. Something so dangerous that it changed all the rules of war forever." The students looked at each other with worried faces. What could be so scary that it was kept secret from military students? "Computer, show the classified files," Professor Kane commanded. The big screen at the front of the room lit up. It showed a list of all the different alien races in the galaxy. Each race had information about their military strength, their weapons, and their fighting styles. But one name on the list looked different from all the others. "Humans," the professor said. Slowly, species number 7741, home planet, Earth. A student named Zara spoke up. She had green skin and 4 arms and came from a warrior planet called Thrax. "Professor, I know about humans. They are part of our galactic council. They trade with us and work with us on science projects. Why are they on this secret list?" "Professor," Kane pointed to the screen. Next to the human entry were red letters that said, "Banned from all military operations." The classroom became very quiet. Students whispered to each other in confusion. "Humans are the only race in the entire galaxy that is forbidden from joining any war," Professor Kane explained. "They cannot fight alongside other races. They cannot help in battles. They cannot even send weapons to help their friends." A student named Bob from the ice planet Frost spoke up. "But Professor, humans seem so friendly and peaceful. Why would they be banned from helping in wars?" Professor Kane walked closer to the students. "That is exactly what makes this story so frightening. Humans do seem friendly and peaceful. When you meet them, they smile and shake hands. They share their food and their knowledge. They help build hospitals and schools on other planets." He paused and looked around the room. "But 50 years ago, something happened that changed everything we thought we knew about humans." The screen changed to show a beautiful blue and green planet orbiting around a yellow sun. It was Earth, the human homeworld. But the image showed Earth from 50 years ago, when humans had just learned how to travel between stars. 50 years ago, humans were new to space travel, Professor Kane continued. They had only a few small colonies on nearby planets. Their spaceships were simple and weak compared to other races. Most aliens thought humans were just another primitive species that would slowly learn and grow over many centuries. He touched the control panel again. The screen now showed a different planet, one that was gray and rocky with several moons. "This is the planet Kepler 442b, 50 years ago. It was home to a human colony called New Hope. About 10,000 humans lived there, growing food and mining metals to send back to Earth." The students leaned forward to see better. The planet looked peaceful and quiet. The humans on New Hope were farmers, miners, and their families. They had no big weapons and no military ships. They just wanted to live peacefully and build a new home. Professor Kane's voice became darker. But peace did not last long. The screen changed again, showing large, black spaceships with red markings on their sides. The ships looked dangerous and powerful, with many weapons visible on their hulls. These ships belonged to the Keth Empire. The Keth were a proud warrior race that controlled 12 star systems. They were known throughout the galaxy for their advanced technology and their cruel fighting methods. A student named Lisa from the desert planet Arid asked, "What did the Keth want with the human colony?" The Keth believed that all weaker races should serve stronger ones, Professor Kane answered. When they found the human colony, they saw an opportunity to gain new slaves and resources. The screen showed the Keth ships approaching the human colony planet. The images were taken from security cameras on the planet's surface. The Keth sent a message to the humans on New Hope. They said, "You will give us half of everything you produce. You will follow our orders. If you refuse, we will destroy your colony and everyone in it." The students watched as small human ships tried to escape from the planet. These ships were tiny compared to the massive Keth warships. The human colony leader was a man named David Miller. He was a farmer before he became a leader. When he received the Keth message, he called a meeting of all the colonists. Professor Kane showed a recording from inside a simple meeting hall on the colony. Thousands of humans had gathered together, their faces showing fear but also determination. David Miller stood before his people and read the Keth demands. Then he asked for a vote. Should they surrender and become slaves, or should they refuse and fight? The recording showed hands rising throughout the crowd. Almost every human in the hall raised their hand. They voted to refuse, Professor Kane said. Every man, woman, and even the older children voted to fight rather than become slaves. A student named Omar from the water world Aquatica looked confused. "But Professor, how could they fight? You said they had no weapons and no military ships." "Professor," Kane nodded, "that is exactly what the Keth thought too. They expected the humans to surrender immediately when they realized how hopeless their situation was." The screen showed David Miller recording a message. He looked tired, but his voice was steady and strong. David Miller sent this reply to the Keth Empire. Professor Kane said as he played the recording. In the recording, David Miller looked directly into the camera. "To the Keth Empire, we have received your demands. We reject them completely. We are free humans, and we will die free rather than live as slaves. We know you will probably destroy us. But before you do, know this. You have just made the biggest mistake in your empire's history." The recording ended, and the classroom was silent. Professor Kane looked at his students. The Keth commanders laughed when they heard this message. They thought it was just the brave words of people who knew they were about to die. The screen showed the Keth ships moving into attack position around the human colony. What the Keth did not know, Professor Kane said slowly, was that David Miller had already sent another message. This message went to Earth, and to every human colony in space. He paused, looking around the room at the worried faces of his students. That message would change the course of galactic history forever. Professor Kane touched the control panel again. The screen showed a small human spaceship flying through the darkness of space. It was moving very fast, faster than normal ships could travel. "This is the emergency messenger ship Swift Wind," Professor Kane explained. David Miller sent this ship to Earth just minutes before the Keth attack began. The message it carried was only 12 words long, but those 12 words would change everything. A student named Anna from the forest, Planet Verd, raised her hand. "What did the message say, Professor?" Professor Kane looked at the screen where the text of the message appeared in large letters. "New Hope under attack by Keth Empire. Send help. Remember the Alamo." The alien students looked confused. Most of them did not understand what "remember" the Alamo meant. "The Alamo was a place on Earth where humans fought a famous battle long ago," Professor Kane explained. When humans say, "Remember the Alamo," it means something very special to them. It means they will never forget when someone attacks innocent people. It means they will fight back, no matter how long it takes. The screen showed the message ship reaching Earth. The blue and green planet looked peaceful, with white clouds floating over the continents. But something was about to change. When the message reached Earth, it arrived at the Human Defense Council headquarters, Professor Kane continued. The Human Defense Council was a small organization. Humans had never fought a real war in space before. They had only a few military ships and a small army. The screen showed a meeting room on Earth. Around a big table sat 12 humans in dark blue uniforms. They looked serious as they read the message from New Hope. The leader of the Human Defense Council was a woman named General Sarah Johnson. She was old and wise, with gray hair and sharp eyes. When she read the message, she stood up and spoke to the other council members. Professor Kane played a recording from that meeting. General Johnson's voice was calm, but there was something dangerous in her tone. "Members of the council," she said in the recording, "the Keth Empire has attacked our people on New Hope. They have threatened to destroy innocent families who only wanted to live in peace. This is not just an attack on one colony. This is an attack on all humanity." The students watched as the other humans in the meeting nodded their heads. Their faces showed anger, but it was a cold, controlled anger. "General Johnson continued speaking," Professor Kane said. She told the council about an old human law called the Defense Authorization Act. This law said that if any human colony was attacked by aliens, all of humanity would respond as one. On the screen, General Johnson was still speaking to the council. "Members, I am activating Protocol 7, she said. "As of this moment, all human worlds, all human ships, and all human resources are now part of our military force. We will not stop until the Keth Empire understands that attacking humans has consequences." A student named Jack from the mountain planet Rocky looked confused. "Professor, what is Protocol 7? Professor Kane's expression became very serious. Protocol 7 was a plan that humans had made, but hoped they would never need to use. It was their plan for total war. The screen showed what happened next on Earth. Across the planet, sirens began to sound. Not emergency sirens, but a special signal that all humans recognized. When humans heard those sirens, they knew what it meant, Professor Kane explained. Every human factory that made cars would now make military vehicles. Every human factory that made computers would now make weapon systems. Every human farm would grow food for soldiers. Every human school would become a training center. The students watched in amazement as the images showed human cities transforming. Huge factories that had been making peaceful things suddenly switched to making guns, ships, and armor. The humans worked day and night without stopping. But the most surprising thing was not the factories, Professor Kane continued. The most surprising thing was the people. The screen showed crowds of humans lining up outside military offices. Young humans, old humans, humans from every profession imaginable. They were all volunteering to join the fight. Within 1 week, 50 million humans had volunteered for military service, Professor Kane said. Remember, humans had never fought a war in space before. Most of these people had never even seen a weapon. But they all wanted to help save the people on New Hope. A student named Maya from the crystal planet Sparkle asked, "But Professor, how could they train so many people so quickly?" "That is another thing that surprised everyone," Professor Kane answered. Humans had been preparing for this possibility for many years, even though they hoped it would never happen. The screen showed massive training facilities that had been hidden underground. On Earth, thousands of humans were learning how to use weapons, how to fly spaceships, and how to fight in zero gravity. Humans call this being prepared for the worst, Professor Kane explained. While they worked for peace, They also planned for war. They had training programs ready, weapons designs ready, and battle plans ready. The images showed human engineers working on new spaceship designs. These ships looked different from the peaceful ships humans had used before. They were bigger, stronger, and covered with weapons. The humans had a saying, Professor Kane continued. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. While they were building colonies and making friends with other aliens, they were also secretly preparing for the day when someone might attack them. A student named Carlos from the volcanic planet. Flame raised his hand. Professor, what happened to the people on New Hope? Did the Keth destroy them? Professor Kane nodded sadly. Yes, the Keth attacked New Hope 3 days after David Miller sent his message. They destroyed the colony completely. 10,000 humans died, including David Miller and his family. The screen showed the burning ruins of the human colony. The once peaceful farms and homes were now just smoke and ash. When the news of New Hope's destruction reached Earth, something changed in the human people, Professor Kane said. Before this, humans had been sad and angry. Now they became something else. They became determined. The recording showed General Johnson speaking to the entire human population on Earth through television and radio. People of Earth, she said, her voice steady and strong. The Keth Empire has murdered our brothers and sisters on New Hope. They killed innocent farmers, teachers, children, and grandparents. They thought we would be afraid and surrender. They were wrong. She paused, looking directly into the camera. We will build the greatest military force this galaxy has ever seen. We will find the Keth Empire, and we will make sure they never hurt anyone ever again. The recording ended, and Professor Kane looked at his students. What happened next, he said quietly, was something that no alien race had ever seen before. The humans didn't just build an army. They turned their entire civilization into a weapon. The screen showed the final image of this part of the story. Earth, surrounded by thousands of new spaceships, all painted in dark colors and bristling with weapons. The peaceful blue planet had become the center of a growing war machine. Students sat in stunned silence, beginning to understand why humans were banned from galactic warfare. Professor Kane changed the display to show a timeline. Numbers and dates moved across the screen, showing the months that followed the destruction of New Hope. For 6 months after New Hope was destroyed, something strange happened, Professor Kane said. The humans disappeared. A student named Ben from the gas planet Nebula looked confused. What do you mean they disappeared, Professor? I mean exactly that, Professor Kane replied. Human ships stopped visiting other planets. Human traders stopped coming to alien markets. Human diplomats left their posts and returned to Earth. It was as if all humans had suddenly vanished from the galaxy. The screen showed empty space stations where human ships used to dock. Alien merchants waited for human traders who never came. The galaxy felt strangely quiet without human voices. Other alien races began to worry, Professor Kane continued. Some thought the humans had been scared by the Keth attack and were hiding. Others thought maybe the humans had decided to give up space travel completely. A student named Rita from the jungle planet Green asked, but what were the humans really doing during those 6 months? Professor Kane smiled, but it was not a happy smile. They were working harder than any species in galactic history had ever worked. The screen showed images from inside human space during those 6 months. What the students saw made them gasp in surprise. Every human planet had changed completely. The peaceful colonies that had grown food and made simple products were now giant factories. Massive machines worked day and night, producing spaceships, weapons, and armor. In 6 months, humans built more military equipment than most alien races built in 50 years, Professor Kane explained. But the machines were not the most impressive part. The most impressive part was the humans themselves. The images showed millions of humans working together like parts of a giant machine. They worked in shifts so the factories never stopped. When one group of workers got tired, another group immediately took their place. Humans had a word for this, Professor Kane said. They called it total mobilization. Every human became a soldier, a factory worker, or a support person. Even human children helped by carrying messages and organizing supplies. A student named Tom from the metal planet Steel raised his hand. Professor, how could they coordinate so many people? Our species can barely organize a few thousand workers at one time. That is one of the most frightening things about humans, Professor Kane answered. When they decide something is important, they can work together better than any other species we have studied. The screen showed human communication networks connecting every planet, every ship, and every person. Information flowed instantly across their entire civilization. Humans shared everything, Professor Kane explained. Every new weapon design was immediately sent to all human worlds. Every improvement in ship engines was shared with every shipyard. Every successful training method was copied by every military base. The images showed human scientists working around the clock in research laboratories. They were designing new types of weapons that had never been seen before. While other alien races keep their military secrets from each other, humans did the opposite, Professor Kane continued. They shared all their knowledge because they believed that making humanity stronger was more important than individual glory. The screen showed the results of their work. Massive spaceships that were 3 times larger than anything humans had built before. Weapons that could destroy entire asteroids with one shot. Armor that could protect against the strongest alien technology. But the ships and weapons were still not the most dangerous thing the humans created, Professor Kane said. The most dangerous thing was their plan. A student named Nina from the cloud planet Misty asked, "What kind of plan, Professor?" Professor Kane activated a new display showing the map of the galaxy. The Keth Empire's 12 star systems were marked in red. Around them, dotted lines showed possible attack routes. Most species fight wars by attacking one target at a time, Professor Kane explained. They choose the weakest enemy position and attack it with all their forces. Then they move to the next target. This gives the enemy time to prepare defenses and call for help. He pointed to the map where hundreds of thin lines connected human space to every single Keth world at the same time. Humans decided to attack everywhere at once, Professor Kane said. They called it simultaneous overwhelming force. The idea was to hit every Keth military base, every Keth planet, and every Keth ship at exactly the same moment. The students looked at the map in shock. The scale of coordination required for such an attack seemed impossible. To do this, humans built over 3,000 warships, Professor Kane continued. They trained 15 million soldiers. They created supply lines that could support attacks on 12 different star systems simultaneously. The screen showed human fleets practicing their formations in empty space. Thousands of ships moved together like schools of fish, turning and accelerating in perfect coordination. Humans also did something that no other species had ever attempted, Professor Kane said. They gathered intelligence on every single Keth military installation, every ship, and every weapon system. The images showed small human spy ships sneaking through Keth space. These ships were so small and quiet that the Keth never detected them. For 6 months, humans watched and learned everything about the Keth Empire, Professor Kane explained. They knew where every Keth ship was located. They knew the weakness of every Keth weapon. They knew the daily routines of every Keth. Commander, a student named Alex from the sand planet Dune asked, "Professor, why didn't the Keth notice all this activity? Surely they must have realized something was happening." Professor Kane shook his head. The Keth made a fatal mistake. They thought humans were primitive and weak. They were so confident in their own power that they didn't bother to spy on human space. The screen showed Keth commanders relaxing in their palaces, celebrating their victory over New Hope. They had no idea that a massive human war machine was preparing to strike. The Keth believed they had taught humans a lesson, Professor Kane continued. They thought the destruction of New Hope had scared humans into hiding. They were completely wrong. The final images of this section showed the human fleet on the day before their attack. 3,000 ships were organized into 12 separate battle groups, one for each Keth star system. Each battle group was larger than the entire military force of most alien species. On the day the humans were ready to attack, General Johnson sent one final message to the Keth Empire. Professor Kane said. The screen showed General Johnson standing in the command center of the largest human warship. Behind her, thousands of displays showed the positions of human forces throughout the galaxy. To the Keth Empire, she said in the recording, 6 months ago, you murdered 10,000 innocent humans on New Hope. You thought we would forget. You thought we would be afraid. You thought wrong. In 24 hours, you will understand the meaning of human justice. The recording ended, and Professor Kane looked at his students. Their faces showed a mixture of fear and amazement. What happened next, Professor Kane said quietly, was the largest military operation in galactic history. Professor Kane changed the display to show a clock counting down from 24 hours. The numbers moved quickly, showing how time passed after General Johnson's warning message. The Keth Empire received the human warning, but they did not take it seriously, Professor Kane explained. Emperor Vask, the leader of the Keth, called an emergency meeting with his military commanders. The screen showed a recording from inside the Keth Palace. Emperor Vask was a large, red-skinned alien with 4 arms and sharp teeth. He sat on a throne made of black metal, surrounded by his generals. Humans dare to threaten us? Emperor Vask laughed in the recording. These weak creatures think they can fight the mighty Keth Empire. We destroyed their colony in minutes. We will destroy their entire species just as easily. His generals laughed with him. They were all experienced warriors who had conquered many worlds. To them, humans were just another weak species to be crushed. Emperor Vask sent a reply to the humans. Professor Kane continued. He said, "Little humans, we are not afraid of your empty threats. We have 12 star systems and millions of soldiers. You have nothing that can harm us. Surrender now, or we will destroy Earth just like we destroyed New Hope." A student named Dave from the ocean planet Blue asked, "Professor, what did the humans do when they received this message?" Professor Kane showed another recording. This one was from the Human Command Center, where General Johnson and her staff were watching the countdown clock. General Johnson read the Keth message aloud to her commanders, Professor Kane said. Then she looked at the clock. There were only 2 hours left until the attack would begin. In the recording, General Johnson turned to her communications officer. "Send this message to all human forces. The Keth have chosen war. Show them what humans do to those who murder our families." The screen split to show 12 different locations. These were the command centers for each human battle group, positioned near each of the 12 Keth star systems. At exactly midnight Earth time, the attack began, Professor Kane said. 3,000 human ships moved into Keth space simultaneously. The students watched in amazement as the recording showed the coordinated attack. In 12 different star systems, at exactly the same moment, human fleets appeared out of hyperspace. The first thing humans did was destroy all Keth communication systems, Professor Kane explained. Within minutes, no Keth commander could talk to any other Keth commander. Each Keth world was completely alone. The screen showed human ships firing precise shots at Keth communication satellites and relay stations. The humans had studied Keth technology for 6 months, so they knew exactly where to hit to cause maximum damage. The Keth commanders tried to organize a defense, but it was impossible, Professor Kane continued. They could not coordinate their forces because they could not communicate with each other. A student named Lisa from the desert planet Hot raised her hand. Professor, how many ships did the Keth have to defend themselves? The Keth Empire had about 800 warships, Professor Kane answered. They thought this was more than enough to defeat any enemy. They were used to fighting one star system at a time, where they could concentrate all their forces. He pointed to the display showing human ships surrounding each Keth world. But humans attacked with 3,000 ships divided into 12 groups. Each group had about 250 ships. So each Keth world faced more human ships than they had ever seen in one place. The recording showed Keth ships trying to fight back, but they were outnumbered and confused. Without communication, each Keth fleet fought alone against overwhelming human forces. The human strategy was simple but effective, Professor Kane explained. They attacked military targets first, warships, weapon factories, and army bases. They ignored civilian areas completely. The screen showed human ships focusing their fire on Keth military installations. Massive explosions lit up the darkness of space as Keth warships were destroyed one by one. Within 6 hours, the entire Keth military fleet was destroyed, Professor Kane said. 800 ships built over decades were gone in one night. A student named Mark from the ice planet Cold looked shocked. Professor, what about the Keth armies on their planets? Did they surrender? Professor Kane shook his head. The Keth were proud warriors. Even without their spaceships, they tried to fight from their planets using ground forces and defensive weapons. The screen showed human ships orbiting Keth worlds. Instead of attacking the planets directly, the humans did something unexpected. Humans used a tactic they called siege warfare, Professor Kane explained. They surrounded each Keth planet and waited. No ships could leave, no supplies could arrive. The Keth worlds were completely cut off from each other. The images showed human ships forming a tight ring around each planet. Any Keth ship that tried to escape was immediately destroyed. On the third day of the siege, Emperor Vask tried to negotiate, Professor Kane continued. He sent a message from his home planet to the human fleet. The recording showed Emperor Vask looking very different from before. His confident smile was gone, replaced by worry and fear. Humans, he said in the message, we are willing to discuss terms. Perhaps we can reach an agreement that benefits both our species. Professor Kane showed the human response. General Johnson appeared on screen, standing on the bridge of her command ship. Behind her, the Keth homeworld was visible through the window. Emperor Vask, General Johnson said calmly, 6 months ago, we sent you a message asking for peace. You responded by murdering 10,000 innocent people. Now you want to negotiate? She paused, looking directly into the camera. Here are our terms. Complete and immediate surrender of all Keth military forces. All Keth leaders responsible for the attack on New Hope will be arrested and tried for war crimes. The Keth Empire will be dissolved and rebuilt under human supervision. A student named Paul from the ring planet Circle asked, Professor, what happened when the Keth heard these terms? Emperor Vask refused, Professor Kane answered. He said the proud Keth would never surrender to inferior species like humans. The screen showed what happened next. On each Keth world, human ships began targeting specific buildings, government centers, military academies, and weapons research facilities. Humans did not attack civilian areas, Professor Kane emphasized. They only destroyed buildings used by the Keth government and military, but they did it with incredible precision. The recordings showed human weapons hitting their targets exactly. Government buildings collapsed while civilian houses next to them remained untouched. For 7 days, humans continued this selective bombardment, Professor Kane said. Every day, they destroyed more government and military targets. Every day, Emperor Vask's power grew weaker. The screen showed crowds of Kef civilians watching their government buildings burn. Many began to realize that their leaders had led them into a war they could not win. On the 10th day of the siege, something unexpected happened, Professor Kane said. The Kef people themselves began to surrender. The final images of this section showed white flags appearing on Kef planets. Kef civilians and soldiers were laying down their weapons and walking toward human landing areas with their hands raised. Professor Kane showed the final recordings from the Kef War. On every Kef planet, white flags flew from government buildings. The mighty Kef Empire, which had ruled 12 star systems for over 1,000 years, had fallen in just 10 days. The surrender was complete, Professor Kane explained. Emperor Vask and all his generals were arrested by human forces. The Kef military was disbanded. The empire that had threatened the galaxy for centuries was finished. The screen showed human soldiers accepting the surrender of Kef forces. The humans were professional and calm, treating their defeated enemies with respect. But the story does not end with the Kef surrender, Professor Kane continued. What happened next frightened the entire galaxy. A student named James from the storm planet Lightning asked, what could be more frightening than destroying an entire empire in 10 days? Professor Kane changed the display to show the Galactic Council chambers. Representatives from hundreds of alien species filled the massive hall, all talking nervously among themselves. News of the human victory spread quickly across the galaxy, Professor Kane said. Within days, every alien government knew that humans had destroyed the Kef Empire faster than anyone thought possible. The screen showed alien leaders in emergency meetings on dozens of different worlds. Their faces showed shock, fear, and confusion. The Galactic Council called an emergency session, Professor Kane continued. This was only the 3rd time in galactic history that all species had been summoned for a crisis meeting. The recording showed Council Speaker Zane, a tall blue alien with 6 arms, calling the session to order. His voice trembled as he spoke. Fellow beings of the galaxy, Speaker Zane said, we have witnessed something unprecedented. A species we considered primitive has destroyed one of our oldest and most powerful empires in mere days. The council chamber erupted in nervous chatter. Representatives whispered to each other in dozens of different languages. The first speaker was Ambassador Krell from the Vorthan Republic, Professor Kane said. The Vorthans had fought the Kef Empire for 50 years without winning a single major battle. In the recording, Ambassador Krell stood at the speaking platform. His lizard-like features showed amazement and worry. Honored Council, Ambassador Krell said, my people fought the Kef for half a century. We lost millions of soldiers and hundreds of ships. We could never defeat them. Yet these humans destroyed the entire Kef Empire in 10 days. How is this possible? Murmurs of agreement came from across the chamber. Many species had fought the Kef and failed. The next speaker was General Tox from the warrior clans of Rigel, Professor Kane continued. The Rigel clans were known as the greatest fighters in the galaxy. General Tox was a massive alien covered in natural armor. When he spoke, his voice was deep and troubled. Council members, General Tox said, I have studied the human battle recordings. Their coordination was perfect. Their strategy was flawless. Their technology was advanced. But that is not what worries me most. He paused, looking around the chamber. What worries me is their determination. When the Kef destroyed their colony, humans did not just want revenge. They wanted to make sure the Kef could never hurt anyone ever again. They fought not just to win, but to completely eliminate their enemy. A student named Kelly from the flower planet Bloom raised her hand. Professor, why was this determination so frightening to other aliens? Professor Kane nodded. Because most species fight wars for limited goals. They want to capture territory or resources or to force political changes. When they achieve their goals, They stop fighting. He pointed to the display showing human forces still working on former Keth worlds weeks after the surrender. Humans fought for a different reason, Professor Kane explained. They fought to solve a problem permanently. Even after the Keth surrendered, humans continued working to rebuild their society completely. The screen showed human administrators helping to establish new governments on former Keth worlds. They were teaching Keth civilians about democracy and peaceful cooperation. Humans spent 2 years rebuilding the former Keth Empire, Professor Kane said. They created new schools, new hospitals, and new governments. They wanted to make sure that the Keth people would never again become a threat to innocent civilians. The recording showed former Keth soldiers learning new jobs as farmers, teachers, and engineers. Human instructors worked patiently with their former enemies. The Galactic Council watched all of this with growing fear, Professor Kane continued. They realized that humans approached war completely differently from every other species. The screen returned to the council chamber, where the debate continued. Representative Yara from the Peaceful Federation spoke next, Professor Kane said. Her species had never fought a war in their entire history. Representative Yara was a small, gentle-looking alien with large, kind eyes. When she spoke, her voice was soft but worried. Honored Council, she said, we have always believed that war should have limits. Species fight until one side wins, then they make peace and return to normal life. But humans do not seem to understand limits. She gestured to the display showing human reconstruction efforts. They did not just defeat the Keth, they completely changed everything about Keth society. They eliminated not just the Keth military, but the entire Keth way of thinking about war. This is not normal warfare, this is something else entirely. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The final speaker was Admiral Nex from the Advanced Technology Coalition, Professor Kane said. His species had the most sophisticated weapons in the galaxy. Admiral Nex was a robotic-looking alien with glowing blue eyes. When he spoke, his voice was emotionless, but his words were chilling. Council members, Admiral Nex said, I have analyzed human military capabilities in detail. Their technology is impressive, but not superior to our own. Their ships are powerful, but not invincible. Their weapons are effective but not unstoppable, he paused for emphasis. But their method of warfare is something we have never encountered. They mobilized their entire civilization for war. Every human became part of their military machine. They shared all their knowledge and resources. They coordinated perfectly across hundreds of worlds. His glowing eyes scanned the chamber. If humans ever decided that another species was a threat to their survival, they would approach that war the same way they approached the Keth War. They would not stop until that species was completely defeated and rebuilt according to human values. The screen showed the Council's final vote. By an overwhelming majority, they passed Resolution 7741, the Human Species Limitation Act. Professor Kane displayed the text of the resolution on the screen. From this day forward, he read, humans are prohibited from participating in any galactic military operations. This limitation is not a punishment, but a protective measure for all species in the galaxy. The recording showed the human ambassador, Director Morgan, accepting the resolution calmly. We understand the Council's concerns, Director Morgan said. Humans agree to this limitation. We will handle threats to human space ourselves, quietly and efficiently. The galaxy will be safer this way. Professor Kane turned off the display and looked at his students. The classroom was completely silent. And that, he said quietly, is why humans are banned from galactic warfare. Not because they are weak, but because they are too effective. When humans fight, they don't just win battles, they solve problems permanently. The students sat in stunned silence, finally understanding the truth about their peaceful human neighbors.